Hey Tips, Cal Warren Mutter. This is the SwitchWire build, Project Cotton Candy. We're not doing a actual build. I hope you weren't thinking that. This is no nonsense. We're going to talk about some of the struggles and things we encountered while putting this thing together, because the instruction documentation is actually quite fantastic. This is definitely a step above IKEA manuals, and people seem to figure those out. So I figure if the competency is enough to tackle a 3D printer, a DIY, then you don't really need a step-by-step video from me, as there's plenty on YouTube. Instead, I'm going to talk about the mods we're doing while we build this, because it's not a traditional SwitchWire. It is, but it isn't. Added some goodies and things that we're going to talk about and show you right now, because we're at that stage. So I also want to talk about things you need to do while you're putting it together, so that way you don't make mistakes and have to take panels apart, which is a huge pain in the nads, especially on the SwitchWire. So let's dive into it. This is episode 1. We're going to be covering the frame and the bed together, so stay tuned, stick around, let's watch this. The first thing that you really got to know when building a SwitchWire is making sure that your panels, these big bad boys, are oriented correctly. There is a through hole on this side, and you can't have them flipped around, but you shouldn't, because then you have to restart everything. So make sure that you check the alignment holes for the Z-axis and go from there. Now, I did something a little bit untraditional and a little bit different. I'm going to zoom out here. I installed the linear rails first because it didn't really make any sense to me to have to waste all the space and trying just to do something extra. So I pre-installed the linear rails, and I'm really happy about it. I did have to use a bolt in here, jam it in there just to hold this, because you have to take the key back off to get this panel in. However, it definitely was worth my time pre-installing the linear rails. I felt like I had more workspace in the area to actually get things is square and true with the little clips that you print, just to ensure everything is nice and tight and lined correctly. This is one of the biggest pinch points that people have on ender wire conversions, switch wires, and some other things that Physitech's team is working on diligently, or daily I should say. They're converting so many printers to Voron. Is a great place to join. Check out Physitech's Discord if you can. I'll include a link to an invite at the bottom of this channel for you guys to get in there and check things out. Anyway, moving forward, one of the biggest pain in the nads moment I had was this rail, and it still isn't clocked in here quite perfectly, and I'm going to go through and adjust that. It's just the top piece that needs to come forward a little bit, but this guy was such a pain in the nads. I actually had to use a clamp, hold it down, tighten it, and use another clamp going this way with the key back off. So I had a double clamp method here to just keep this guy at exactly 165 millimeters from the linear rail edge to this inside post here. And that was a little revealing to me, because I have not ran into that with any Voron kit so far, just this guy for whatever reason. And if you look, I'm not clocked or anything. It's not quite flush either. This extrusion is a little funky for me in my LDO kit. It's just a hair wider than the inside plate. So really interesting that happened. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience yet, but that was just mine. And it doesn't really matter, because the linear rail, the X extrusion, is actually adjustable, so you can slide it in or out based on what you need to do. Now, my build plate, you might have caught on the camera that I have a little funky system here. I ordered these custom from Mandela Roseworks. It uses a umbilical PG7 right here for the X-axis instead of using that drag train. And then this is for the bed. And I'm using this custom mount I designed, and I'm going to be releasing this to the public shortly. My wire, the braid needs to come apart and get redone, mainly just because it is not the right size loom, and so it actually kind of bunches up. So I got to get a really nice and tight loom on here. I do have some 1/4 inch stuff. I'm going to try to snake through that, and that will solve a lot of my problems. Another thing that I did that's important to notate is when you are installing your belt, you get your belt as tight as you can under the bed and then mount everything together. But what you do is you loosen this M5 and this M3 on the back, and you will pull it as tight as you can. I use a screwdriver to wedge in here after I manually use my hands to tighten it. just to get it that much tighter. And what I'm looking for is a smooth transition. So what I've noticed on these bed slingers, when you're pushing crazy speeds and accelerations, like anything above 100 millimeters per second and your slicer, your print starts to come this way, right? Because the bed can't keep up with the x-axis. There's a lot of momentum and a lot of weight here. Now, I could argue and say that the same thing is said for the x-axis. However, that is not necessarily the case. For some reason, the y never seems to keep up with the x on a bed slinger, and I plan on investigating this and trying to fix this in the future. But number one, for input shaping, while you have it here, what you need to do is ensure that your belt is not touching the bottom or the top of that pulley. So in the camera angle here, it's a little sketch. It definitely, oops, looks like I'm touching, but I assure you I am not. There's actually a gap in there, and that's what you need. So when your belts are touching the pulleys, that creates vibrations and issues on the belt itself and creates some resonance and some funky issues arise. The other thing I haven't tackled yet is where to mount an accelerometer to the bed. I don't have a clue where I'm going to do that. So we might be taking off this and maybe doing some kind of printed part that spans across this bed. I do have a 300 millimeter 2.4. So it's definitely in the scope of possibilities to print something that will mount here. Possibly, I'm not really sure how I'm going to tackle that. Maybe we use, you know, some hefty magnets to try to lock this guy down. I'm not really sure. I'm not quite there yet. That is a problem to solve for another day. Now, this Prusa bed, good God, those magnets are strong. I'm absolutely impressed with the Prusa bed. I know Prusa makes good stuff. I had a rep wrap 10 years ago when Joseph Prusa was just really kind of starting, he was getting started, right? And 3D printing was a little more expensive than it is today, but this bed is fantastic. Absolutely excited with it, about it. All these parts were sourced, minus linear rails, I got from West 3D. And I also need to tell you that I did not get these pieces from West 3D. I got these from Amazon, and they were on the Enderwire. And full disclosure, this was before I actually got linked up with West 3D. So, sorry, Dan. Okay, so we got the PG7 for the bed figured out. The wire tuck is complete. I'm very happy with it. We have an umbilical down at the bottom and plenty of slack on those wires. So don't freak out or think that I'm gonna break my wires like all Enders. That is not the case here. And I made sure to twist the cable before mounting it tight here to ensure that we don't have any weird cable flexes or bendies going on. We don't want that to happen. Underneath this top hat macaroni part is 4 bolts that are countersunk, obviously, so the cover can go on there. And you know, it goes through the bottom. Not going to be a big deal because we have Physitech's new SwitchWire panel that I'm really excited to use. If you want to see something funny of how tightly the tolerances are on this, if I push here, it pops out, and if I push here, it locks down. So there are provisions for the power supply here that will definitely help keep this down. And I am excited to go through this with you guys, as well as all the wiring that can just be a huge pain in the nutsack. But moving forward, the umbilical wiring is done for the bed. And for me, that was one of the bigger challenges for this week and getting the bed done, just because of how tedious things are. But things move back and forth. I'm really excited to get this thing going one more step closer to the finish line. And definitely hope you guys are enjoying the reviews as we build this and talking about some of the upgrades and whatnot. Again, these panels will be available on printables, as well as the parts needed to print and connect it. I'm working with West 3D on coming up with a kit that you can just buy and have it shipped to your house if you decide to upgrade your existing SwitchWire, or if you plan on doing some kind of new build and you want to get it through West 3D, parts will be available for that. I know the switch wires are kind of dying and they're hard to find and all that, but hopefully we can get a kit going together for these and kind of spark the rebellion again on these switch wires, because they are absolutely fun. They're not a workhorse by any means, but these are a ton of fun. As well, I'm working with Physitech Group on coming up with different configurations of this umbilical kit for printers that are bed slingers that are converted to a switch wire. So Ender wires for one, BQ wires, whatever. Okay, so we'll be working on that project together as well. So stay tuned for updates, and please like and subscribe.